Hello, I'm Troy with the Tavern Tales channel, and today we're going to talk about a Dungeons & Dragons Online expansion called the Mist of Ravenloft. Now this is not new, this was released back in 2017, but besides this being my favorite expansion, I've led a group of players through the Curse of Strahd pen and paper campaign, and there's several details and spots in here where the game designers put pieces of the campaign world in here that could best be enjoyed if you're a player that has experienced both the video game and the pen and paper campaign. So I'm going to take a look at several pieces of lore in here and maybe unlock some of the secrets of Ravenloft. Now note that some of this is too dark for a video game, so I see why they didn't use it. So trigger warnings and spoilers for those who are watching. So one of the first things we see when we enter Ravenloft is the headless statues. Now there's no explanation here and there's no explanation in the campaign. What's cool about this is it looks exactly like it does in the book for players that approach Ravenloft. Now, are these some old rulers that once led? Are they, protectors that were struck down? Who knows? But it sure sets an ominous tone. Next, we see Irina's home, or the home of the burgomaster. Now, this is not part of the story, but if you leave the tavern where the burgomaster's body is, you see this boarded up, scratched up home. Well, basically, this is because Strahd has sent wolves and bats and countless other creatures to attack this nightly until Irina becomes his. So it's just more of a little bit of the dark part of it. The cool thing about Strahd, though, is after the burgomaster's death, he did stop. So maybe he has a little bit of compassion. If you poke around in Barovia, you'll also find the dream pastries. Well, there's Morgantha peddling her wares, or actually, she trades them for children because that's the ingredient of her pies. Free samples, anyone? Pretty nasty, but she's there as foreshadowing for what's about to occur. Now, if you leave the city of Barovia, or the town of Barovia, you'll see these gallows along the road. Now again, these are without explanation, but in the pen and paper campaign, when your players see this, they see a vision as clear as could be of somebody hanging from the gallows, and to one of your players, it's going to look like them. So it's another creepy part I'm glad is represented. Now the Vistani camp, in the pen and paper campaign, this is where we first see Madame Eva. And there we see her in this camp as well, located between Barovia and Vallaki. Now here in the campaign, she will tell us our fortune using the Troika cards. And she will help tell us, where we can find a friend in the land, and where the Tome of Strahd can be found, or the Holy Symbol of Ravenkind, or the Sun Sword. Now this was moved to the quest in the campaign, but it's still a nice place to rest, and it's kind of cool that she's there even if she doesn't give your fortune in the game here. The March of the Dead. So every night at midnight in the pen and paper game, ghostly figures rise from the graveyard in the Church of Barovia. These are the spirits of adventurers who have come to defeat Strahd in the past and failed. So clad in spectral armor and tattered cloaks, they silently march along the old Svalish road headed towards Castle Ravenloft. Pretty eerie. Alright, now one of the things I kind of hope to see, and we can see kind of a essence of it here, is Strahd's horse carriage and his own personal steed, Bocephalus. Now if we look, even though they're not there, the carriage house is there. So you see that it's still on the ground. So makes you think of the black carriage, which he sends to escort characters up to Ravenloft for dinner, or his mighty mount, the Nightmare Bocephalus. Both would have been cool additions to the game, but at least we've got the carriage house to remind us that they're there. Now in the city of Vallaki, in the pen and paper game, you'll meet Rictavio. Rictavio is a bard who is actually Van Richten in disguise. So when I saw this wagon on the edge of town, my first thought is this must be Rictavio's cart, where he's got a tiger in the pen and paper game, but no, this is Ezmerelda's magic wagon. I started looking and the images look exactly like what's in the book. Now here she keeps lots of potions, there's tricks and traps, and it summons magical steeds to drive, so it's one of her weapons against Strahd. And sure enough, we do see it once again at Van Richten's tower when we meet Ezmerelda again. So That's her magic wagon, even if it's not discussed in the game. Now, this next one is perhaps one of the most terrible tragedies underlying Ravenloft that we never really hear about. So we meet Casimir and Petrina when he tries to bring her to life, but you know, they're the last, or some of the last of the Dusk Elves. Now, the Dusk Elves were once part of the Elven continuum in the Feywild. They didn't take sides in the war between Corellon and the Drow, so both of them cast them out. And it was one of Saloon's Fey aspects that cut up off to the sanctuary, and eventually they settled in Barovia. Well, that didn't work out for them when it became one of the Dark Realms. But their culture was steeped in primal magic, and they were led by Casimir Velikov, who we meet here. He's a druid. Well, Petrina, his sister, rejected their people's traditions and sought power through necromancy and offered herself to Strahd as one of his brides. So during her transformation, she attempted to drink the blood of a Dusk Elf child, and her own people stoned her to death, preventing her from completing the ritual. Well, Strahd took her bones, and what he did to the Dusk Elves is horrific. He killed all the women and children, or actually had Rahadin, who is a Dusk Elf himself, and his chamberlain, to kill them all. So the next thing he did then was to punish Casimir. He cut off his ears. So basically, their culture here is doomed. They're not going to come back to life. Petrina had been reaching out in dreams to ask for her life back, and Casimir wants to travel to the Amber Temple in order to look for a particular power from a dark power that will give him the ability to bring her back to life. And in the campaign he does, but he's doing it for his own guilt and grief, not really out of love, and it just, as you can see from the campaign, it turns out horribly. But knowing that Rahadin, Strahd's closest, I guess, his underling in the game, is a Dusk Elf, and he betrayed his own people, it's just really a dark ending to a sad story of the Dusk Elves before they even landed here. Now here, if you can see it, yeah, he ends up in the game. They have her try to turn to Strahd and cure him so that he can does no longer have his curse. Well, clearly he doesn't want any part of that. You know, for all the bad that goes along with it, he wants to be the Dark Lord. And here he is. You look closely, we can see that poor Casimir's ears have been shaved to shame him. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible dark story. All right, the Wizards of Wine. We know there's 3 gems these are introduced in the game, but the backstory is really cool. And while they do touch on most of it in the flavor text that the characters talk to you, basically there were 3 wines that were created by the winery: Purple Grape Mash, Red Dragon Crush, and the rich Champagne de l'Estampe. Now, these 3 gems existed until one of them was stolen probably about a decade ago. Ironically, the person that was on watch when it got stolen was Erwin, the same guy we see who is our patron with the Keepers of the Feather. It was his responsibility that supposedly got it stolen. The next one was stolen by Baba Lysaga, and she used it to power that beast of a hut that she walks around in. And then the third one was stolen just recently by the Druids, who also have stormed the winery and taken over, crushed the grapes, poisoned what wine was left. It was pretty nasty. So, you know, one of the things that's kind of unique, I guess it's the same here in our world, is that they want to make sure they get the wine back because life's bad enough in Barovia without the cheer of wine. So now we see Berez, and it's in ruins, but I don't know if we really discussed much in detail about why. So Berez was once a quiet fishing village along the Luna River, and there was a young woman there, Marina, who was one of the reincarnations of Tatiana, Strahd's long love. And like he has done throughout history, and like he does with Irina, he became infatuated with Marina and planned to turn her into a vampire. and the Burgermeister and the village priest discovered his intentions and killed her to save her soul and to prevent her from transformation. Strahd was so angry that he flooded the Luna River, drowned the entire village, killed almost everybody, and left it in the swampy situation it is today. So the story behind this is pretty tragic, much like most of Barovia and Ravenloft. Now, there's an entire adventure that's kind of unique in that most of the adventures in the pen and paper version are introduced in the story, in the video game version, but we don't see the werewolf den. Well, in the werewolf den, we have Kirill Stoyanovich here, who we actually see as a rare, who is the leader, and they're sadistic. They kidnap young people throughout the realms. They force them to fight. The ones that win become turned into werewolves, become part of the tribe. And there was a former alpha, Emil Turanescu, who tries to stand up to Kirill. And Kirill's having none of this, so he and Strahd lock him in the dungeons. And sure enough, if you go through one of the quests, you do find Emil trapped in the dungeons. And if you talk to him nicely, you find out that he's a werewolf, and he's going to transform on us here in a second, and it'll help you. Say the wrong thing, he turns against you. And as we're about to see here, my character, this interaction, said the wrong things because he's coming after me. But yeah, there he is, the former alpha of the pack. So one of the weird things in Lady Wachter house is you find her husband laying in the bed. And he's clearly dead. Well, he's been dead for a long time. She casts gentle repose on him, and he just stays there forever by her side. Pretty creepy. And this box full of bones, yeah, one of their enemies, she sealed his bones in that chest, and just to make sure that no one will ever find him and raise him. So, pretty awful. Now, the Church of St. Andal, we see this in Wallachia, but they don't talk about the story. This is actually one of the rare places in all of the land where Strahd can't go. There are the bones of St. Andal, the one of the saints in here, and undead cannot go in there. So this is where Irina wanted you to take her to when she left the town of Barovia. So there you have it. There's some Secrets of Ravenloft. Again, this is my favorite of all the expansions in Dungeons & Dragons Online. Hopefully you'll play the game and your favorite too. Thank you for tuning in. Again, I'm Troy with Tavern Tales. I'm obsessed with the legends and lore of Dungeons & Dragons and the game Dungeons & Dragons Online. So thanks for watching, and hopefully I will catch you in game.